Night Sentinels, and those that tasted the bite of his sword named him the Doomslayer.
The Doomslayer opposes the infinite legions of hell, slaughtering demons across worlds and through time. In the legendary past, and in ages yet to come, the demon hordes bring chaos to all worlds. But the Slayer comes, and will always come, to restore balance. The eternal champion of the multiverse. Wait a minute. The eternal champion of the multiverse sounds familiar. Now I remember. I've read about an eternal champion in the writings of Michael Moorcock. In his writings, an eternal war between chaos and law rages throughout the multiverse. Either extreme, pure chaos or complete lawfulness, implies complete destruction. Pure chaos is formless and completely disordered. Pure law is static and dead. Perfection is attained only by striking a balance between chaos and order. However, the domination of chaos is the constant threat, because all things tend to become more disordered with time. Whenever chaos threatens to dominate some part of the multiverse, the eternal champion arises in that world, embodied in a peerless warrior. In the Moorcock universe, there are gods of chaos and gods of law. The gods of chaos are essentially demons, and the planes or dimensions they rule are essentially hills. So, in a universe where demons threaten to conquer all, an eternal champion must appear, who can single-handedly restore order. The best known of Moorcock's eternal champions is Elric of Melniboné. Elric is a king of a human-like race, who wields the demon sword Stormbringer. Stormbringer is actually a sentient being in sword form, a being of chaos who consumes the souls of the enemies it slays, empowering Elric. There are a number of parallels between Elric and the Doomslayer. Both are kings. Both are peerless warriors who gain strength from slaying their enemies. Both are avatars of the eternal champion. Remember the Soul Cube from Doom 3? It's quite similar to Stormbringer, a sentient weapon that absorbs the souls of the enemies it kills, empowering the one who wields it. So there are a lot of similarities, but I'm not claiming that the guys at id Software were directly inspired by the idea of the eternal champion. Moorcock himself got the idea for Stormbringer from the novel The Broken Sword, and perhaps even the idea of law versus chaos. In this book, the hero, Skaflock, journeys to the land of the Frost Giants to have a broken demon sword reforged. After the giant blacksmith Bolverk reforges it, Skaflock cries, "Swiftly goes the swordplay. Soon the foe shall hear the wailing song of weapons. Warlock blade is thirsty." Another example of the eternal champion comes from The Waste of Time by Robert Jordan, the Gillette commercial of high fantasy, in which the dragon is reincarnated throughout the ages, always rising up to oppose the forces of toxic masculinity led by the Dark Lord Satan. Of course, given that Jordan has taken the idea of the Wheel of Time from Hinduism and Buddhism, it's possible he was inspired more by the idea of the Avatar than by Moorcock. Moorcock himself could have been inspired by this idea. The Hindu Wheel of Time, or Kala Chakra, comprises 4 ages which endlessly repeat. According to Hinduism, we are in the 4th age, the Kali Yuga. The Kali Yuga is the dark age in which man loses his connection to the spiritual. Hindus believe that human civilization degenerates spiritually during the Kali Yuga. Common attributes and consequences are spiritual bankruptcy, mindless hedonism, breakdown of all social structure, greed and materialism, unrestricted egotism, afflictions and maladies of mind and body. The Kali Yuga is when the avatar Kalki will be born, to slay the armies of the demon lord Kali and the demon generals Koka and Vikoka. The Doomslayer wore the crown of the Night Sentinels in the First Age. When was he resurrected? Like Kalki, he arises in the 4th Age to slay the demon armies. The fact that he arises in the 4th Age, like Kalki, To slay the demon armies, like Kalki, seems to be a conscious decision. The lore of Doom is deeper than one would think. For example, the juxtaposition of advanced technology with the demonic has always been an odd feature of the Doom titles. What does advanced technology have to do with demons and hell? In the context of the traditional Doctrine of the Two Natures, Revolt Against the Modern World, Chapter 1, it begins to make sense. In traditional societies, there is a lower world and a higher world. The higher world is the sacred, spiritual world, transcendent, the abode of the gods, the world of the eternal, of being and of forms. This world was represented by solar symbolism, by mountaintops, and by beings of light. The lower world is the world of the profane, physical, or material, of demons and the underworld, associated with the world of becoming, the contingent, and the material. In Moorcock's multiverse, the higher world is the one associated with law, and the lower world is the one associated with chaos. Modern society is demonic because it is completely focused on the material world, technological and social progress, while completely neglecting spiritual development. In the Doctrine of Awakening, Evola says, quote, "If one day normal conditions were to return, few civilizations would seem as odd as the present one, in which every form of power and dominion over material things is sought, whilst mastery over one's own mind, one's own emotions, and psychic life in general is entirely overlooked. For this reason, many of our contemporaries, particularly our so-called quote-unquote men of action, really resemble those crustaceans which are as hard-shelled outside with scabrous incrustations as they are soft and spineless within." Unquote. In Crisis of the Modern World, René Guénon writes, "Western encroachment is the encroachment of materialism. This could be disputed only by the gullible, or by those who have an interest in aiding a process that is truly satanic in the strictest sense of the word. Satan, in Hebrew, is the adversary, the one who turns things upside down. This is the spirit of negation and subversion, which is identical with the descending or downward tendency. Infernal, in the etymological sense of the word, and which governs beings in this process of materialization, upon which the whole development of modern civilization is based. The UAC represents the culmination of materialization. It is a mega-corporation dealing with advanced technology and cutting-edge science, and therefore completely immersed in the lower world, even as it explores the heavens. Its technological mastery opens the gates of hell, unleashing the demon hordes. Coincidence? Furthermore, consider who the big bosses of the Doom games are. Generally, they are either scientists in demon form, or even more symbolically, a giant brain with a chain gun, walking around on mechanical legs. And who is the only one who can stand against the legions of hell? Only the reawakened king, the sovereign of an ancient order of holy warriors, who wore the crown of the Knight Sentinels, which were clearly based on the Knights Templar. The Knights Templar was an initiatic order of ascetic warriors, which fits perfectly with the traditionalist interpretation of Doom's lore. Initiation and kingship were seen, in traditional societies, as the way to transcend the lower, demonic world. Initiation was the way in which the higher, sacred world could be directly experienced, in which man partook in superhuman states, becoming a god and a king. In India, for example, members of the higher caste were not considered superior to the lower castes, who were considered demonic, until they were initiated, thereafter being known as the Twice-Born. The fact that the Doomslayer is a king is also significant. The motif of the wounded king is an archetype most familiar in our times through King Arthur, who will rise again in the hour of our greatest need. In the traditional world, kingship and initiation were both considered to have a superhuman origin. The king was considered as the pontifex, the bridge or path between the profane world and the sacred higher world. This was the root of his authority. The king was also associated with solar symbolism. In Revolt Against the Modern World, Evola writes, quote, "In tradition, kingship was often associated with the solar symbol. In the king, people saw the same glory and victory proper to the sun and to the light, the symbols of the superior nature, which every morning overcame darkness." One of the most characteristic symbolic expressions of this idea comes from the Zoroastrian tradition, wherein the Havareno, the glory that the king possesses, is a supernatural fire characterizing heavenly and especially solar entities that allows the king to partake in immortality and that gives him witness through victory. This victory must be understood in such a way that the two meanings, the first mystical, the second military, material, are not mutually exclusive but rather complementary. I find this quote interesting given the lithograph, the gift of Argent power, the blessing of the seraph, and Doom 2016's glory kill mechanic. Here the king of the night sentinels receives the sacred fire from heaven. The solar symbolism is obvious. Given that the king who receives the gift of Argent power is shown as dead in the trailer, the Doom Slayer must be his successor. Much of the Slayer's power is the result of a blessing by a seraph.
In his crusade, the Seraphim bestowed upon him terrible power and speed.
A high-ranking angel. His glory is both military and mystical. It increases with victory, and his power accelerates even faster by performing glory kills. The following quote from Evola fits in perfectly with the following scene from Doom Eternal. Quote, "According to a far eastern tradition, the king, as a son of heaven who is believed to have non-human origins, enjoys the mandate of heaven, which implies the idea of a real and supernatural force. This force that comes from heaven, according to Lao Tzu, acts without acting through an immaterial presence, or by virtue of just being present. It is as invisible as the wind, and yet its actions are ineluctable as the forces of nature. When this power is unleashed, the forces of common men, according to Meng Su, bend under it as blades of grass under the wind. As the pontifex and bridge between the natural world and the supernatural, the king was considered the sacred center of the traditional society. This was the symbolism of the throne and the scepter." Quote, "The notion of Cakravartin, universal king, is also connected to a cycle of enigmatic traditions concerning the real existence of a, quote, center of the world, unquote, that exercises this supreme function here on earth. Some fundamental symbols of regality had originally a close relationship with these ideas. One of these symbols is the scepter, the main function of which is analogically related to the, quote, axis of the world, unquote. Another symbol is the throne, an elevated place. The same symbolism is embodied in the ziggurat, the Assyrian-Babylonian terraced pyramid. In these places, we find the architectural expression of the cosmic order, complete in its hierarchy and in its dependence upon an unmoved center. From a spatial perspective, this center corresponded, within the building itself, to the king's throne." Unquote. Recall, for example, the Tower of Babel, the center from which all of mankind diverged, mankind's attempt to create a path to heaven. In Doom Episode 2, Map 8, we had the Tower of Babel, and in Doom 2016, the Argent Energy Tower. Both are monuments of technology and progress, and both end up being gateways to hell rather than heaven. They are the satanic inversion of the traditional idea. Now, given these facts, listen to the Tier 2 manifest for the Argent Energy Tower. As a Tier 2 advocate, you have already proven yourself dedicated to the UAC's mission. The Argent Tower is a monument to that dedication. It is the center of our universe. It is our triumphal arch. It is the gate that marks the path to our future. As such, it must be cared for with reverence and devotion, as if it were your own child. It is up to you, Tier 2 advocate, to make sure our altar to the future functions perfectly at all times. In the profane religion of modernity, the spiritual ascent to heaven is replaced by material progress towards a utopian future. Society is remade in the quest to bring heaven down to earth, which instead takes earth down to hell. In many cases, stories, legends, and myths have hidden meanings. The surface-level story we call the exoteric. The hidden, symbolic meaning is the esoteric. It's clear that esoterically, the UAC's alliance with hell represents the demonic nature of the modern world, and the Slayer's eternal war against cyber demons, spider masterminds, and demon-possessed zombies symbolizes the traditional path toward the conquest of chaos, initiation, regality, and asceticism.